But how do you manage when you have two of the loudest voices in this sphere going at each other on the same team? And, if you want to leave, you can quit. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, well, poorly, apparently, because it really spilled over into a public dispute, which I think, obviously we'd all prefer that not have happened in the way that it did. But I pay people to talk for a living. I pay people to have opinions, and you're going to occasionally have conflict when you allow people a lot of latitude to say what they believe. Yeah, he got on the phone with both parties and didn't tell them what they had to do, but made some suggestions about what might be helpful, and I think that they both found their way back from the brink a little bit.
Fantastic. That's good to hear.
All right, folks. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We are now back, and we got to react to something I think a lot of people were waiting to see, which is the end resolution of the Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens drama, right? Was Candace Owens going to end up leaving the Daily Wire? Were we going to see another, frankly, disastrous and unnecessary rift in the conservative media space? Well, I think a couple weeks ago, when you saw them go back and forth over Israel and it got pretty nasty, and Ben Shapiro straight up said, hey, you can leave the Daily Wire if you want. It seemed like that's where it was going. But folks, Jeremey Boering went on the PBD podcast today to discuss this. And I have to say, I am pleasantly surprised, and I think a lot of people were, because it just seemed like with what was happening, this was how it's going to end, right? Candace was going to leave and make her own media outlet, which of course, I guess wouldn't be the end of the total world, but you just did not want to have to see a division or a rift in the conservative media space. We've already had quite a few of those, and I did say at the time, I said I did not think that would in the end be good for the conservative movement. But Jeremey did tweet about this saying, and this was a couple weeks ago, but he says, I am currently on a leave of absence from my executive duties at the Daily Wire. In my current capacity, I cannot fire Candace Owens. That is something that Ben and I have in common, since he is also not an executive in the company and cannot hire and fire people, which I did also point out at the time is true. Ben, obviously, as a founder of the company, probably has a pretty big say in what happens, but in his formal capacity, right, he does not currently run the Daily Wire like a lot of people think. But he goes on to say, even if we could, we would not fire Candace because of another thing we have in common, a desire to not regulate the speech of our hosts, even if we disagree with them. Candace is paid to give her opinion, not mine or Ben's. Unless those opinions run afoul of the law or she violates the terms of her contract in some way, her job is secure and she is welcome at the Daily Wire. And I said at the time, mad respect, right? Because obviously that whole thing did get pretty nasty and the writing seemed to be on the wall. And I think if it were a different company, if it were Fox News easily, what would probably have ended up happening there. But truly, objectively, respect to Jeremey Boering for going out there and saying this and defending the free speech. And I think you kind of look around, it seems that the beef there has at least cooled off a little bit. I mean, I don't know if they're on the best of terms, but hey, in a workplace, not everyone has to be on the best of terms. I think the greater agenda is what's best for the company and ultimately what's best for the movement. And I once again reiterate, I did not think tearing the whole media space apart and forcing people to pick sides and all this stuff, it was going to be very nasty. It was not going to be beneficial in the long term. And thankfully, again, respect to Jeremey Boering, respect to the Daily Wire. That is not what is going to be happening, and they went out on a limb and defended Candace's right to her own opinion, which was very good. But anyways, with that said, today Jeremey went on the PBD podcast and talked about this a little bit more, and we're going to react to that here today. Here you go.
A feud between Candace and Ben, and it was pretty public. Obviously, with the Israel challenge taking place, these guys going back and forth. He's got strong positions where he's at, and she has strong positions where she's at, and Candace is not one that's going to sit there and be quiet about it. But, how do you, as a CEO of a company with all this different talent that you guys have? First of all, you have Jordan Peterson with Daily Wire, okay? You got Matt Walsh, What is a Woman? I think he may have figured out the answer to the question by the time he was done with the documentary. It was a very interesting process.
It was an expensive journey to get to the answer, yeah. To say the least.
You got Candace Owens, okay? You got your business partner, but also talent, because he's not the operator. You're the operator, Ben Shapiro. And you got a few other guys there as well. But how do you manage when you have two of the loudest voices in this sphere going at each other on the same team? And, if you want to leave, you can quit. How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, well, poorly, apparently, because it really spilled over into a public dispute, which I think, obviously we'd all prefer that not have happened in the way that it did.
And I said that even at the time, too. They can have these disagreements. I think it's known, it's understood that at a company with a lot of different hosts who commentate on things, they're not all going to agree, and that's fine. But I think for the sake of company and public relations and optics and all of that stuff, it's okay even, I think, for the host to publicly disagree and, debate with each other. But I think the nastiness that it got to was probably not all that necessary. I still will say, I think that if anything, they should have just sat down and had a debate and stream it even, right? I think that would be good for ratings and would just be a better look overall than that Twitter feud that kind of just mysteriously ended and everything seemed up in the air. But, it's true. Folks, it is obviously a very unstable time in the world right now, which is why it's never been a better time to invest your money in safe, stable assets like gold, silver, and precious metals. And whether it's converting a retirement account into a physical gold IRA or just using some spare cash to buy a little bit of gold to have, our friends at Noble Gold Investments can help you do this. Noble Gold has been helping customers like you secure their financial security with gold and silver for years now and have achieved an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. So especially if you're brand new to investing or especially investing in gold, our friends at Noble Gold can walk you through the entire process, and you can trust that A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. So if you're the least bit interested, do me a favor, because they do a lot to support this channel and are a big reason these videos are possible. Go check out the link at thevincedao.com. You can fill out a form there to put your contact information, or if you want to call them directly and speak to a real person, give them a call at 877-646-5347. Again, if you're just the least bit interested in investing in gold and silver, our friends at Noble Gold will give you the rundown and options, and your contributions, obviously, to Noble Gold go back into this channel. So, vincedalegold.com or dial the number. Check out our friends at Noble Gold.
I pay people to talk for a living. I pay people to have opinions. And you're going to occasionally have conflict when you allow people a lot of latitude to say what they believe. And,
right.
I think to Ben's great credit, I can't think of any other talent who has started a company that empowers more people to say what they believe without having to agree with him. Ben is perhaps the most famous Orthodox Jew in America, and yet he empowers Christians on his platform to not just be Christians and have a platform, but to be very forward-facing with their beliefs on that platform. That's to Ben's credit. Ben allows people who disagree with him on economics. Ben allows people who disagree with him on foreign policy. He gives them all very broad latitude to say the things that they believe. To your point, he's not running the day-to-day operations, but that philosophy of what the Daily Wire will be and how it will empower its talent to have their own opinions is something that Ben and our business partner Caleb and I instilled in the company from the very beginning.
Which, again, that's very good to hear, because as we saw with a very prominent one, Tucker Carlson and Fox News recently, not all companies are run like that. In fact, I'd argue probably most companies are not run like that. There definitely is a very controlled agenda, and definitely the people in charge of the company will have their opinions. But if you kind of cross that or step over that, we see many different instances and cases where that ends up just completely basically falling apart, right? And they don't tolerate that. And so I think when you contrast the way Fox News handled just not being happy with Tucker Carlson actually being a conservative and having real opinions, versus how Daily Wire has handled this, where they're saying, your job is still safe, it's fine, just cool it down. Like I said, I think it deserves respect.
So, nothing that took place in this conflict limited anyone's ability to say the things that they think.
Which is
good. Very opinionated people on different sides of an issue. Sometimes those clashes are going to become more front-facing. As you say, Candace isn't one to back down. Ben's not one to back down either. And so we found ourselves in kind of a little bit of an ugly situation, and it seems like it's calmed down now.
Do you, when that happens, do you immediately call a meeting and call a Zoom and guys, let's just get on the call and try to hash this out? Is that the approach, or you kind of let it fizzle out and, have them deal direct with each other?
Yeah, depends on who's involved, I suppose. Some people take criticism better than others, and also sometimes, it's the nature of conservatives that we're somewhat reactionary. And so sometimes going directly at the problem isn't the best way in that situation to come to a consensus. You don't want people to feel like you're boxing them in. You don't want them to feel like you're trying to force them to back down when what they do for a living is never back down. So I think it's delicate. This one was particularly delicate to manage. But, I was actually out of the country, producing a film series that we're doing called The Pendragon Cycle. My business partner, Caleb, was flying this one far more directly than I was. And yeah, he got on the phone with both parties and didn't tell them what they had to do, but made some suggestions about what might be helpful. And I think that they both found their way back from the brink a little bit.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. The question I got for you.
So that basically sums up him actually talking about this. Now, I would say for PR purposes and stuff, it'd probably be good if both hosts, they don't even have to apologize to each other, but kind of just went out on Twitter and clarified, I guess, to the public, hey, everything's cool now, whatever, we settled it, we squashed it. But at the same time, if they did that, then you'd probably assume, hey, that's what, the company, that's what corporate called them and told them you need to do. And I think the fact that they didn't do that and it just kind of everything sort of fizzled off does seem to show, I think that's probably truly actually what happened here, right? That neither host was really forced to take it one way or the other. They kind of just said, well, here's what we recommend, but we're not forcing you. Because if they were forcing either host to say something for the sake of the company, it'd probably be, oh, you got to apologize to each other, put out a statement. Neither one did that. They kind of just moved on from it, which again, if I were running the company, I might kind of want them to go out and publicly clarify, but clearly, they didn't force anyone to do anything. Which again, I'm going to say I'm pleasantly surprised, not because of anything against the Daily Wire. It's just I've seen how a lot of other conservative media companies, Fox, have handled situations like that, and it gets a lot more nasty and corporate and dirty, and you see Fox News trying to blackmail Tucker Carlson, and the fact that none of that happened, like I said, heartening and encouraging to say the least, because inevitably, the other way it would have ended is that, either it ended the way it did, which is Daily Wire says you guys both have your free speech. It's fine. We're just going to kind of move on from it. Or it would have ended with Candace Owens leaving, which would have, she's not exactly an irrelevant person, right? She was someone before the Daily Wire. She's going to be someone long after. And so inevitably what have happened is she's going to leave. She's going to start her own thing, probably her own company. And maybe that gives more jobs to conservatives out there, I suppose. But at the same time, you're going to have yet another rivalry. And then it's going to be a bunch of people who maybe like hosts on all these different networks, but you got to pick sides. Are you with Steven Crowder? Are you with Daily Wire? Are you with Candace Owens? It would just be a big mess and civil war that I think if possible to avoid, which clearly they have avoided, which is a good thing, if possible to avoid going into 2024, going into arguably the most important election year of our lifetimes, you want to avoid the unnecessary conflicts. There are very necessary conflicts out there, whether that's liberals versus conservatives or the real conservatives versus the neocons and the establishment and stuff. But you don't really need the conservative media space to seem as divided and just disjointed as arguably, I guess, the Republican Party is in many ways. Like I said, just not necessary, just not something that had to happen. And I'm honestly glad that it didn't happen, because most people probably thought that's what's going to happen. And so respect to Jeremey Boering, respect to the people running the company at Daily Wire who said, look, we're just going to move on. It's fine, and I'm glad to see it. I suppose. I really am. So with that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on this entire situation down in the comment section down below. We will be starting the podcast, or at least using the podcast studio sometime this week. So be sure to stay tuned. I don't know if we're going to start it maybe tonight or tomorrow, but we're going to be live, okay, from the new studio. We've been kind of trying to set that up. That's why I haven't been live for a while. So be sure to join us then. And until next time, be sure to check out our friends at Noble Gold. Again, that is VinceDaoGold.com. Like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very good day and peace.